Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is the sacred moment of death. With me is veterinary doctor Karlene Stange from Durango, Colorado. She is the author of the book, The Spiritual Nature of Animals. A country vet explores the wisdom, compassion, and souls of animals. Welcome again, Karlene.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's great to be here with you.
And it's a pleasure to be with you. You have personally participated in the death of, I imagine we're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of animals in your decades of practice.
True.
I don't believe in my 72 years of life I've ever been present at the moment of death of any living being. No, I should take that back. Bugs. I've been responsible for the death of many bugs, and I suppose maybe as a way of leading into the topic, I can say when it's large, like if it's a spider, I will, as often as I can, release them outdoors rather than to kill them. But I've killed many a bug without a second thought.
Right. Well, we're all bad Buddhists in that way.
No.
Bad Jains.
Yeah. Yes, the Jains sweep the sidewalk in front of them when they walk to avoid killing bugs.
Right. And some of that is for preventing animal suffering. But I understand, it's my understanding, that the main reason is to prevent karma on their part, the karma associated with killing.
Yeah.
And so it's really not about the animal as much as it is about their own karma. And so, so what does a veterinarian do? We are intimately related to death on a daily basis.
You are licensed to take the life of an
licensed to kill, and veterinarians in practice deal with death daily. You know, either something's dying or you euthanize it, or you're talking about it with someone. Is it time to euthanize this pet? What's the right thing to do? You know, animals come in pretty banged up, mangled, and you have to make this decision. Can you financially afford to fix this? Or do we euthanize? Which is, a tough one too, because you could fix it maybe. You'd like to try, but you don't have the money. And, veterinarians end up with a lot of animals that way.
Oh.
Yeah. People don't want them anymore. They can't afford it. They can't afford to fix it. So I remember a very sad case when a couple came in with a golden retriever. He's a 2-year-old golden retriever, and he ate things. And in his stomach were a spark plug and a bottle cap and one of those little plastic things on drawstring, like stuff bag drawstrings.
Oh, yeah.
Those 3 things were visible on X-ray.
Oh.
And he just ate things, which is called pica. And, rather than trying to figure out why, basically we have to get the spark plug out of his stomach, okay? Yeah. That's surgery. That requires anesthesia. We should do blood work first, all this stuff. And it's so much money. And people are like, no, I'm not doing it. We're not doing it. Euthanize the dog. And I remember that veterinarian, he kept lowering the price. I'll just go in, take it out, and I won't do any fancy things. We'll cut the price as little as he could. And they just said no. So it's heartbreaking sometimes. It took him all day. It was the last thing he did at the end of the day, was euthanize that dog. It's very hard for us every day to face, the ability to help and not have the money to do it. And then there are times when euthanasia is a blessing. It's like, let's let this animal go now. It's suffering. It's really, really in misery. And so, yes, I've become intimately associated with death, and it made me think a lot about it. What happens at the end of life? So it all started this book because of 2 clients, a Buddhist and a Baptist. So the Buddhist had taken the vow, the first precept, the Buddhist vow to not kill. So she could not elect euthanasia. And her old dog that she inherited from her father was quite decrepit. It couldn't get up. And it took me a while to figure out what was wrong with it. It had hyperadrenal corticism, and then the adrenal gland burned out, and it got hypoadrenal corticism, and it was being kept alive with prednisone medication, a corticosteroid drug. And so she wanted me to help the dog die naturally, but not euthanize it. And so after several days, I suggested, why don't we stop the prednisone? And the dog died overnight. So that worked out well.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, this Baptist woman called me early one morning, born-again Baptist, old woman, a neighbor of mine. She wanted me to come over and euthanize this old horse. And there was really nothing wrong with him, and I tried to talk her out of it. But she wouldn't have it. She said, I don't believe in letting him get old to suffer. So I euthanized the horse, and when I did, I said, she had told me how her husband had died in her arms some years before. And so I said, the horse is dead now, the horse and your husband are together. And she screeched at me, no, they're not. My husband's in heaven and that horse is just dead. And I said, well, where'd the energy go that's just there? I don't know, it's just gone. And she started quoting Bible verses. Yeah. Well, I can quote Bible verses too. So we had this very long, very interesting conversation. Oh. Now, the Buddhist had believed that the animal could have been a human in a previous life, and that it may become a human in a future life. So she didn't want the dog to suffer, but she believed it was better for it to suffer its karma in this life so it would have a better life in its next life. So I asked the Baptist, I said, do you believe in reincarnation? She said, no, that's when you come back as an animal. I said, well, not necessarily. And she said, there will be, and she quoted the Bible again, there will be a new heaven, a new earth, a new Jerusalem, and body and soul will be reunited. I said, that sounds like a definition of reincarnation to me. She says, well, maybe it is. Okay? So shortly thereafter, I find out she committed suicide. Oh. All right? And so I hooked up with her son and asked her about, and talk about telepathic communication. They couldn't find her. And he called out to her telepathically and found her, maybe out where I euthanized the horse. Oh. But he told me she had injured her back and the pain medication made her ill, and so she took her own life. Now, veterinarians are cautioned now, since we are very subject to suicide ourselves, that sometimes the client will give away their precious things right before they commit suicide. And I had no idea that's what she was doing. But I think she was, letting him go before she killed herself.
I see.
But, and another veterinarian told me recently that he had a woman come every month looking for something wrong with her dog, and every month he said there's nothing wrong. And then finally one day he found a tumor, and she said, well, let's euthanize. He said, well, okay. So he did, and then she went home and killed herself. So we don't learn these things, in vet school. You learn on the fly, but it's death is just a dance for us.
I sometimes think of death as an opportunity to reinvent myself.
Right. You're getting a new suit of clothes.
Yeah. It's like
a new identity.
I think I'd like to have a whole new personality. Well, maybe not, but circumstances change. It's assuming that we do survive. Death is an opportunity for reinvention. But you've been present at that moment.
Yes.
At least for many animals.
Right. And as a young veterinarian, that was very painful. But as I think veterinarians, as they become more and more familiar with it, it becomes more of an honor to be present in a loving, compassionate, gentle way. And I think what people do so often when an animal is dying is they're panicking and they're crying and they're rushing about trying to do life-saving measures. And I found that really just like Ram Dass says, be present with the suffering. If I'm just present with the animal spirit, like connecting with that being, like it's not really even in the body anymore. It's floating around up here. What do the near-death experience people tell us, right? They're overlooking the whole thing. So I have to be respectful that that's a possibility and talk to that being, and thank them. So here's what the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying recommends. Thank the being. Thank you very much for being my friend all these years. Forgive them for everything. Forgive you for chewing up my shoes or whatever it is, And and then ask for their karma to be forgiven. Say prayers. So gratitude is such a wonderful emotion, and forgiveness. Those are great things to send a being off with, and let them go then. It's therapeutic for everyone rather than being so horribly worried about everything and upset.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure as a doctor, you are able to determine all the physical signs associated with death.
Well, sometimes. You mean like there's agonal breathing and...
Yeah. I mean, it's your job, I assume, to make sure the animal that's been euthanized has in fact died.
Right. The heart has to stop. Respiration stops first. So euthanasia solution is a barbiturate overdose, and it paralyzes the respiratory muscle, so they suffocate. So then you go unconscious. So they're not conscious, but the heart may still beat for a while. So once the heart is done beating, then you pronounce them then gone. Yeah. Doggone.
Would you notice anything, since you've had training in animal communication and at the telepathic level, what do you experience then at the moment of death?
Well, my horse, Pecos, who lived to be 34, 2 months before his 34th birthday, I had to let him go. I mean, everything was not working anymore. Couldn't see, couldn't hear, I won't go on, but I couldn't take care of him anymore. I thought he was going to drown in a pond or, get caught under a fence or something. So, my husband shot him in the head, and when I walked away, I could feel him with me. I could feel him walking with me, and I said, don't stay here. Go to the light. That's the other thing you want to recommend. That's another Tibetan Buddhist thing. But it's something before I even studied Buddhism that I always said, go to the light. Go to the light. And so send that animal off. And another thing you can visualize is the animal flying off and turning into a white being and then dissolving into the white light. Okay, setting them off free of the karma and the attachments to everything that we have here. And then as I walked away, my other horse whinnied to him. I was like, oh, don't do that. Don't call him back. Another veterinarian in Durango, when she does home euthanasia, I've heard from clients, she wants to have the other pets in the house present. And she says, watch them, because a lot of times when the animal is euthanized, the other animals will do that sort of thing. Like they're watching it, the spirit actually leave. So, yes.
So, as you say, it's you now consider it an honor.
I do. And even just the suffering before death, one of the other things we talked about is equanimity, the practice of equanimity, which many religions suggest, which is, staying calm in spite of circumstances, neither having aversion nor grasping for what is happening. And it's a hard thing to understand, but I had an episode with a dog that really helped me. A woman brought this old stinky golden retriever to my house. They had a large tumor on his side that was draining bloody serum all about the place. And everyone was telling her, you need to euthanize this dog, it's suffering. But they weren't ready. The dog was still happy, he was eating. He's a golden retriever, they're always happy, and they just couldn't bear to say goodbye yet, and they wanted my help. So if I let go of the whole judgment about this dog is suffering and it's a mess, it stinks, or whatever, just drop it. Let go of the aversion. When I do that, and I connect with the spirit of the animal, the anima, I call it, and the spirit of the person and the anima they share, it feels like bliss. It feels like this unconditional love. You're in this joyful, happy thing. I mean, what's the hurry? What's the hurry? There's still time to share some love and say goodbye, but we're you know what the problem is? The dog's not suffering as much as our judgments are making us in pain. We're in pain because our judgments are so painful. If you just drop that, it's beautiful. Everything is fine. Okay. So then I move from caring, to, okay, how can I help? I clipped and cleaned the whole area and put this big abdominal roll around it with an ace bandage that they could rewash. Mm-hmm. And, did some acupuncture and gave them some herbs for pain. And, they were happy now for a short time and enjoyed those extra days together. And everyone felt heard. And so, just being present with it in a compassionate mm-hmm. way is much less painful for me. It's much less painful for our clients. I mean, clients come to me all the time and say, she said I should kill my dog, but look at him. They offered to kill him today. They found a tumor and they wanted to kill him today. And look at his eyes. And in Chinese medicine, there's a term, Shen, which is your spirit that resides in your heart. And it's housed in the heart. And the eyes are the window to the heart, right? And so you look in the eyes and the dog is, hey, mm-hmm. You're not dying.
Yeah.
You're going to die from it, maybe from a tumor, but let's see what we can do to keep you comfortable for a while. And some live years. Mm. And so you have to be a little careful about always wanting to sweep our judgment under the floor here.
Well, I suppose the very fact that humans are able to euthanize animals, but not other humans, generally speaking, creates a distinction between how we view ourselves with regard to other species.
Isn't it confusing?
Yeah.
Capital punishment is acceptable. Death with dignity is not acceptable. And if you let your old dog live longer than your neighbor thinks is okay, you're cruel. So it's kind of confusing. People have a hard time. People really have a hard time at the time when they're trying to decide if they need to euthanize or not. It's a very difficult decision. They get all this pressure. And so I try, I think my book is great for those people. And I've had a number of people tell me, your book helped me so much at the end of my pet's life to see these different ways of viewing it and to be more present with it.
Yeah. Now, I don't think you talked about this in your book, but it's pretty relevant. Raymond Moody, the medical doctor who first wrote Life After Life,
read it.
The book about near-death experiences. Yes. Subsequently, he's developed the notion he calls the shared death experience, where people who are at the bedside of a human who is dying and having a near-death experience or a real death experience, go along for the trip with them, experience, I suppose you might say it's like leaving somebody off at the airport and you can go up to the security gate before you can't go any further.
A little contact high.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. Have you experienced that with animals?
No, I have not. Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe you will now.
Maybe. That's very interesting. I've read his books and many other near-death.
This is some of his more recent writings.
I love it. That's interesting.
Yeah. Have and other vets that have they reported anything like that?
Not to me. But these things are kind of not talked about.
Yeah.
People don't want to. It's not science.
But you nevertheless have this feeling that there's something sacred about that moment.
Yes, it's like birth. It's special. It's a special time. It's a transition to somewhere. And, if you can, what else would you rather be than held by your loved one and just loved at that last moment? You don't want them to be crying and screaming and driving to the animal hospital. You might as well just share that last moment with, in that very special, sacred moment, as you called it.
Yeah.
Like birth.
Well, Karlene Stange, once again, a very heartfelt and profound discussion. Thank you so much for coming to Albuquerque and sharing your experiences with me.
My great pleasure, Jeffrey. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being with us.